Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, so just to carry on the Reconstruction, here we're taking from page 7. The main purpose of the Quran is to awaken in man the higher consciousness of his manifold relations with God and the universe. In this view, the essential aspect of the Quranic teaching that Goethe, while making his general review of Islam as an educational force, said to Eckermann, "You see, this teaching never fails. With all our systems, we cannot go. And generally speaking, no man can go further than that." The problem of Islam was really suggested by the mutual conflict and at the same time mutual attraction presented by two forces of religion and civilization. And this is a point that he will carry on and explore in his lectures. Islam has arisen as an antagonism between the inner spiritual moral force of the inner revelation and the outer more practical considerations. And then, to carry on anyway, the same problem confronted early Christianity. The great point in Christianity is the search for an independent content for spiritual life, which, according to the insight of its founder, could be elevated not by the forces of a world external to the soul of man, but by the revelation of a new world within his soul. The kingdom of God lies within. That's the saying. You know. Then he carries on. Islam fully agrees with this insight and supplements it by further insight that the illumination of the new world, i.e. the kingdom of God within, thus revealed, is not something foreign to the world of matter, but something that permeates it through and through. Here we see that there's a denial of dualism right from the start. Thus the affirmation of spirit sought by Christianity would come in respect of Islam, not by the renunciation of external forces which are already permeated by the illumination of the spirit. The external world, including our own flesh and blood, as well as the world at large, is already permeated with divine light. So not by the renunciation of the world and flesh, but by a proper adjustment of man's relations to these forces. And here we go back to that first sentence. The main purpose of the Quran is to awaken in man the higher consciousness of his manifold relations with God and the universe. So we are called to awaken our consciousness of the divine nature of nature, i.e. our flesh and the world, but this is done by summoning that inner experience that Christianity first taught. Hence the next part of the sentence. In view of the light received from the world within. But the really important sentence here is, to go back a couple of lines, by a proper adjustment of man's relation to these forces. Here, Iqbal is calling for an active, creative engagement with the world that had hitherto been in pursuit of the spiritual world was only possible through renunciation. So Islam doesn't reject outright the pietistic pursuits of the religious people, such as monks and etc., but rather, to use his word, it supplements them. So Islam, in a sense, is a supplement to the original project of Christianity to find the kingdom of God within. And he carries on. It is the mysterious touch of the ideal that animates and sustains the real, and through it alone we can discover and affirm the ideal. With Islam, the ideal and the real are not two opposing forces which cannot be reconciled. The life of the ideal consists not in a total breach with the real, which would tend to shatter the organic wholeness of life into painful oppositions, but in the perpetual endeavor of the ideal to appropriate the real with a view to eventually absorb it, to convert it into itself and illuminate its whole being. And in that sentence there's quite a lot, which we build on, and it's an important insight into really the vision of Iqbal, which can be easily misunderstood. It is the sharp opposition between the subject and the object, the mathematical without and the biological within, that impressed Christianity, but was ultimately unable to accommodate both together simultaneously. So this has led to the division of church and state, and then on to secularism. Islam, however, faces this opposition with a view to overcome it. The essential difference in looking at a fundamental relation, determines the respective attitudes of these great religions towards the problem of human life in its present surroundings. Both demand the affirmation of the spiritual self in man, with this difference that Islam, recognizing the contact of the ideal with the real, says yes to the world of matter and points the way to master it with a view to discover a basis for a realistic regulation of life. So this language is very respectful to Christianity, and it uses such conciliatory dialogues, and so Iqbal is demonstrating his knowledge of the Quran, yet he admits that he has read and was influenced, if not inspired, by Nietzsche. While Nietzsche certainly showed a disdain to the religion of Christianity, he wrote in his book The Antichrist, Islam despises Christianity, and it has 1,000 right to do so. Islam presupposes men. We, on the other hand, have a faith that was born of the lower orders. Iqbal is refuting this. I think this saying yes to matter is a very Nietzschean type of thought. Yet Iqbal has just set the stage with a great deal of respect for Christianity. It was known in Germany when Iqbal went there that Nietzsche had described Islam as a yes-saying Semitic religion. So this theme of saying yes to the world and yes to the flesh was a constant refrain in his book, in Nietzsche's book. Thus spoke Zarathustra. He would say things like, remain true to the earth, the yes-saying song. He claims that every true act of wisdom and creation begins not with renunciation. It never began with a kind of turning away from life, but rather wisdom and creativity begins with a passionate acceptance of life as it is. Iqbal obviously, though, saw life as it is as a manifestation of Allah, thereby rejecting outright Nietzsche's materialism. The life spark within is a dynamic center of will and awareness through which the human being realizes the creative purposes of Allah. So we can see that Iqbal was inspired by Nietzsche, but carefully considered them in the light of the Quran. He'd already had the idea of Mardi Mu'min before he read of the Ubermensch. He said, I wrote on the Sufi doctrine of the perfect man more than 20 years ago, long before I had read or even heard anything of Nietzsche. But also the idea that the world and our flesh are bearers of the truth and guidance, or as Nietzsche put it, remain true to the earth. It too had a long precedence in Islam. The Quran it says, Nurihim ayati fi al-thaqi wa fi anfusihim hatta yatabayyana lahum annahu al-haq. We shall show them our signs on the horizons and with themselves until it becomes clear to them that this is the truth. Throughout the development of the history of Islamic thinking, there's always been an aspect which has seen the physicality, our physicality, and the physicality of the world as being a tajalliyat, a manifestation of Allah. However, Iqbal saw that there had been a certain stagnation with exploring these ideas in the Muslim world, and as he had said previously, that East is looking for spiritual inspiration from Europe. And this, as he put, a few pages ago, was in the light of the discovery of people like Einstein. And then just in this paragraph alone, on this page alone, he referenced Goethe. And Goethe saw nature as a divine revelation in a visible form. It's that nature is a harmony of spirit and matter. This was his theme throughout. So as well as being inspired by Goethe and Nietzsche, he also was inspired by other European thinkers. He's not directly influenced them, but this is enabling him to see the already present strands of thought within the Quran and within Islamic. So he was inspired by a person, Bergson, the French thinker, as well as other German thinkers, Spinoza and Hegel. All of these thinkers were trying to reconcile the Christian attitude to the world and to reinstate a dignity to matter. And they were trying to stop seeing it as evil or unreal. And Nietzsche certainly went to extremes in this. And he saw that people who elevated the spirit over matter as just being evil and delusional. But Iqbal, he attempts to reinstate a dignity to Christianity. Iqbal's thinking is, we could class that of spiritual realism, one that sanctifies nature, thereby consecrating the entire world. It's in this light of reinstating a kind of dignity to the world of matter, but also of the inner dimensionality of Christianity and certain strands of Sufism, that Iqbal is really important to us in this age, not just us as Muslims, but I would say for the whole of a human thought. This Iqbal is really bringing some very deep and important matters out here in quite a succinct and concise way, which really gets to the matter. So I'll carry on with my thinking, my reading on another day. So thank you very much.